That is the woo, 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 happy Independence Day to all from the United States of America. And this morning we see oil trading in opening in Asia this Monday morning, a little bit up at the moment. It had started the day a little bit down, but now has recovered and is up above $112 a barrel, under just 1% gain in early trade this morning. Let's go to Omar Najia, Global Head of Derivatives at BB Energy. Omar, again, a Monday morning, lots of politics going on, but the volatility as such in the oil market does seem to be moving in a relatively tight band. Your thoughts this Monday morning?
Yeah, so basically, I like oil lower. I think basically, so same as last week, nothing's changed. So a lot of smoke and mirrors and people jumping up and down, but fundamentally nothing's changed, right? So I think the next big tell for the oil, so I think basically the market needs to puke all this length out to get all this weak length out and then start building again. And I think the market's looking for, July 10 to July 21 is the maintenance of the Nord Stream 1 pipeline, where they have to cut off all gas supplies basically through that to Europe. So how that comes back, I think is going to be a big tell to the market. If it doesn't come back at all, then basically we explode. And if it comes back like it is now, i.e. a reduction of 60%, then I think we ease off. And if it comes back more than what we have now, then I think market eases off even quicker. So the general idea with everything that's going on in the world is, market moves, WTI moves from here, which is 108, 109, down to about 90, and then moves back up again. So that's what I'm looking for.
Omar, are we seeing, we had seen during different periods last year, a lot of interest from the sort of general fund managers, the net interest in the contracts, a lot of flow of general fund money into the oil space. Are we still seeing that? Is that still a big part of the paper market?
No, I think basically funds are lightening up on oil, which is why you've seen the move. So you saw the move from 130 to 123 on WTI. So you peaked at 130, then you went down, you moved sideways, you peaked again at 123. You went out, you moved down, and now you're moving kind of sideways again. So, no, I think basically, how can I put it? Like the easy money's already been made. The question now, so before it was a no-brainer. When everybody was saying, we're going to get an Iran deal and he's going to do, I don't know what, an SPR release and, all this kind of stuff, everybody bought it. But now that, there's nothing much going on, I think we tick lower, basically. So I'm looking for lower generally across everything. I think lower.
Let's go to Lori Hatayan, MENA Director at Natural Resource Governance Institute, sitting in Beirut. Lori, just to lead off this Monday morning, some serious problems in Libya would appear, and nearly all of its oil production knocked out due to civil unrest and uncertainty there. At least that's the reporting. And we don't seem to be that reflected in the oil price, given how dramatic 1 million barrels off a very tight oil market should be. Your thoughts this morning on where Libya goes and the market balance?
Look, from what we are seeing and from what we've heard from the chairman of the NOC in Libya, it seems that escalation is the master in Libya, and things will continue escalating. And as we said before, there is no one if you want, mediator or anyone today that is really looking into a serious de-escalation or serious resolutions for Libya. Therefore, the Libyans will use the oil and gas sector as a political tool, and that's why we are seeing today this escalation and all these fields that are closed and exporting options that are really closed and talking about force majeure. So I think this will continue, and definitely if it continues this way, it will have eventually an impact on the oil prices. Suddenly everybody will remember that, oh my God, Libya is losing 600, 700,000 barrels of oil, and this is not coming quickly back to the market, and we're so tight. So I think today everybody in the region are taken by this visit of Biden to the region, all the exciting news about it. So, and the other stuff, they're not paying much attention to Libya, but definitely this is going to be really serious stuff related to the market.
Let's go to Neil Atkinson, former head of oil markets division at the IEA based in Paris. Neil, the overarching sense about the supply-demand balance, I would say putting prices on the softer side of that 110 to 120 band, is the fact that there really is no disruption to Russian oil, despite all of the machinations around sanctions. Your thoughts on where that goes moving into the third quarter now? Does Russian oil eventually get knocked out, or is that game over?
Oh, well, some Russian will be knocked out. I think that's inevitable. The strength of the resolve of the European Union, the G7, NATO, to continue to support Ukraine, including by imposing tough sanctions, that resolve remains. So I think as time goes by, the Russian exports will start to decline significantly. They'll do their best, of course, to make up with more sales to China, India, and elsewhere. And in the meantime, as Omar was suggesting with relation to the Nord Stream pipeline, the Russians, of course, do have the ability to mess around with the heads of the G7 and the EU by making supply cuts, by shutting down pipelines for spurious claims of technical problems. So there's an awful lot that is still going to happen. But the important thing here is, so far, much of the discussion, and indeed on the recommended reading list that you publish each day, the big emphasis on the supply-demand balance is on supply. And that's to some extent inevitable. We've got Libya, we've got Biden almost taking his begging bowl to Saudi Arabia and elsewhere. We've got Russian cuts. I think we ought to start looking even more seriously, perhaps, than we are already, on the demand side of the balance. And my belief is that if we continue with relatively high prices, if we continue with all the other pressures that consumers are facing on their budgets for food as well as fuel, I think we are going to be cutting back our estimates for demand in the later part of 2022 and certainly into 2023. And reduced demand is, to all intents and purposes, another supply cut. I mean, it takes the heat out of the market from that side. So I think because of the likely impact on demand that I think is going to be the case in the second half of this year, I think, with Omar on this, I think with Laurie, that price pressures will ease to some extent, although we'll stay around the $100 a barrel level.
I would just put that to Omar, because Omar, your view obviously is that there might be a correction down to 90, or at least you're looking for that at WTI, but for that to be essentially a catapult for the oil price to then do the big rocket that you've been calling for some time. The resilience of demand seems to be pretty impressive. We got July 4th weekend, mentioned it at the top of the show. U.S. drivers are moving in every direction, bigger miles than ever before at $5 average gallon. What's your view, Omar, on the resilience, the elasticity of demand?
Very, very basically, oil demand is very, very inelastic. Everything else is pointless. All this detail about they're going to drive more, they're going to heat less, who cares? So markets don't look at demand and basically, excuse me, are you driving more, are you driving less? Nobody cares. What we care about is basically sentiment. What we care about is fear or greed, right? So nobody's going to look at demand balances and I don't know what. We're going to basically wait and see. We need people to stop being long. You need the market to stop just being long, which basically means we go across, because you need to always find the next guy to buy. So there's no next guy to buy. So hopefully you get the next guy to sell. We did. And what's going to propel us in the second half is going to be energy crunch. So nobody has any incentive to stop what's happening in Ukraine, whether it be the West or Russia. So that continues. As we come into the winter, just like Game of Thrones, winter is coming. You're going to put a lot of leverage in the hands of the Russians. And what they're going to do you've said, the West has said, we are going to obliterate your economy. We're going to bring you to your knees, etc. Sanctions as much as possible. So Russia's going to do one of two things. One, nothing. Two, what they have been doing, which is gently squeezing the, little nuts, basically squeezing them like that. And either they go cracked, which I think they will, or not. So that, I think, is what's going to propel us. So what I'm looking for, market to dip. Then basically come winter, you get a screaming rally higher. And when you get that screaming rally higher, economies in Europe, whether it be Germany, all these places basically just go, energy prices skyrocket, and then you get basically the recession, and then you get the market comes off. So broad kind of picture.
Which is a bit sort of a peak 6 months, and then an 18-month maybe. The rise is early at the end of the third, fourth quarter into the first quarter. Laurie, I wanted to get your thoughts on the latest news, or lack thereof, perhaps, out of Doha, the sort of attempts to revive the JCPOA talks. It just feels like flogging of a very dead horse. But nonetheless, welcome your insights on where do you think that's going?
Again, I still stick to my analysis that no one is interested in this JCPOA. They just use it in the media for once in a while, and then you hear all these negative, if you want, comments after that. And again, we heard the Americans were not very happy, saying that the Iranians need to decide what they want exactly from this JCPOA. So again, the Iranians want guarantee that no administration in the US will bring back sanctions, which is impossible. I don't think anyone can guarantee that. So therefore, again, the Iranians are sending signals that yes, we are interested in these negotiations, but then they put all these difficult conditions that makes the discussions impossible. Again, today I still stick to my analysis. Iran is more interested in the nuclear bomb or weapon than interested in finding a resolution for the negotiations. On the contrary, they're pushing more pressure on the Biden administration by saying that, yes, we have the capacity to increase production and save you maybe, but we have these difficult conditions for you. I think with all the discussions that are happening in the region about a potential declaration after the Biden visit, that there will be a regional security apparatus that includes Saudi Arabia and Israel, I think in front of such an idea, Iran would be more interested in having more of a strength and leverage, which is like really seeking to have this nuclear capability, because this will really make them equal in front of this new setup that the regional actors are trying to create. So that's why I don't think any positive outcome will come out of these.
Do you think is that the number one item on the Biden visit? This sort of NATO of the Middle East, which brings Israel and Saudi Arabia together?
So I think this is one of the priorities, at least for the regional actors. Israel, Saudi Arabia, UAE are very much interested in the safety of the countries and setting up a regional setup that will save them from the drones, the Iranian drones, the capacities that the Iranians are trying to have now, and they have, it seems. So I think this is on top of the mind of the regional actors. And you've seen lately, yesterday, 3 drones were like flown into the Israeli platform, into the direction of the Israeli oil gas platform. This is a signal. And same that's been happening, attacking all the oil and gas facilities in the region. So I think for the regional actors want to put that on the table. Definitely Biden is interested again in this increasing production from the region, etc., for his own agenda. But definitely, I think there might be discussions about this new setup, NATO, not NATO style, I don't know, but This is important. And the most important is, like, I think now openly everybody's discussing about this rapprochement between Israel and Saudi Arabia. And this is a major milestone, I guess, in the region, because once Saudi Arabia has peace with Israel or normalization, it will change a lot the dynamics in the region, economically and politically.
And one, as you say, would incentivize Iran to move or accelerate its path towards a nuclear weapon.
Yes.
Let's go back to Neil. Neil, China is the real big sort of uncertain demand story. You mentioned earlier demand destruction on the back of heightened prices around the world. But China has its own unique experience this year with zero COVID, but also the lingering consequence of this, what seems like, as Omar very visually described the nuts analogy, but the Chinese property market does seem to be imploding ever so, not dramatically like we saw in the West in 08, 09, but over the weekend we have the Chinese property developer Shimao missing a repayment on a $1 billion bond. I'm wondering what your outlook for China's economic growth this year will be, and how serious do you think some of these fractures are within the Chinese market?
Well, the Chinese property market, I think, was a case of massive overinvestment over many years. I mean, when I was visiting China regularly with the IEA, you would take the train trips and you go through these the countryside, see these massive apartment buildings, massive developments, cities you'd never heard of with 10 million people living there. And and easy money to a large extent for a long period of time. So to some extent, a crunch was almost inevitable. There's just too much, there's overbuilding. The wider Chinese economy, you're right, of course, they pursued the zero COVID policy. They clamped down pretty hard. And my feeling about it is that the reopening of China to normal economic activity is going to be very carefully phased. They don't want to go from, suddenly everybody bursting out into the streets and risking a resurgence. So the Chinese economy is going to gradually reopen. An interesting thing, though, is that, of course, protecting Chinese citizens from higher energy prices is also an important thing for the Chinese economy. Product exports from China have been drastically cut back in recent months, which has helped obviously affect the international prices. So China's reemergence, I think, will be gradual, and I don't think it will do too much to help the global product price crunch that we're seeing out there right now.
Let's go to this survey question this morning and get everybody's views on this. This overarching theme of the first, or certainly the second quarter, sanctions on Russian oil getting to global markets. Will sanctions succeed in reducing the amount of Russian oil getting to global markets in H2? And I suppose in reducing, I mean, noticeably, sizably. The IEA, I think, had it at 3 million barrels a day in the early stages of the war. But will there be a noticeable, a significant scale of Russian oil decline, or will it continue to get to the global markets in the second half of the year, regardless of the machinations of Western sanctions? Yes or no? Welcome your views on that as we go to closing comments. Omar, the market dynamic we've seen, has been in this sort of bandwidth 110 to 120. You're articulating the need or the outlook for it to decline before it moves to the higher side. I'm just wondering, from that point of view, to get out of the range where we are now and have been sort of locked in for a while, and sort of get to that sort of downward motion, that's a relatively significant move to the downside from your perspective. What would trigger that, do you think? What would there be an event? Would it be, I want to get your sense of what is the machination to bring it down, but not to collapse?
So again, market, so there's no kind of, so people, they like to do cause and effect, right? So because the headline said China did whatever, therefore oil prices fell. Because, demand was said to be driving, I don't know what, then, the price of oil went up. So no, so I think basically the way the market is working is that people already have positions. They are already long. So you've got to see basically what happens. So what drives these people's sentiment? Are they generally happy to go longer? Are they worried to stay long? Are they basically, do they want to take a risk and go short? What is their kind of, sentiment feel?
There's some kind of bet on the long position vis-a-vis supply disruption versus recession 6 months out, and that's where the long debate is going on. And depending where you fall on that, might be where you might cut your losses at the moment.
To a certain extent, sure, but I think basically the market is extremely long. People are long flat price, they're long cracks, they're long spreads. Cracks on distillates went from like, I can't remember, like $55, $60 down to like, or I can't remember where the Q3 was, but it came down to about 35 from about 50, let's say. So that's a massive move. Those moves are not because they sit and they work out what the number for a refinery, what refinery margins are doing, what's the input, what's the price in there. Nobody has time for any of that stuff. The reason is that basically they got scared and they didn't want to hold them anymore, and therefore they just sold. So when you want to sell like that, it's not a question of, excuse me, but could you please sell at 42? It's like, sell. Well, 40 bits, sell it. 35 bits, sell it. Just sell it. I don't care, just sell it. So that's the kind of thing. It's not like, let me try and work it out right now. Chick, 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 chick. So what you need is that kind of thing to kind of, this cathartic kind of thing to finish. So I think the market is coming from a position where everything that you bought made money. And now, the people who were late in that are being punished. So maximum pain is to the downside. When they've been punished sufficiently, when they start saying, that's it, the market's stuffed, we're never going back again. Biden, went to a meeting, fell asleep and fell off down the stairs of a plane or whatever he did. They've made the deal and prices are coming off. Once they start saying that, market will go back up again, I think, because it'll get people to come and kind of bottom fish. So why, for example, $90 WTI, not 100? Because 100 is still like, 90 is a nice juicy thing where you can think, yeah, 90, I can make money if I buy at 90. So you don't really want, you want to buy the extremes of moves. So I'm looking for a down kind of extreme and then an up kind of an extreme, not fair market value.
Laurie, some closing thoughts about, as you mentioned in your earlier comments, this new potential defense pact across the Middle East, where Turkey sits in all of this. We saw over the weekend, Turkey reports that they have detained a ship that is sort of Russian ship carrying stolen grain. As the Russians consolidate their hold right across the different provinces, the east and south of Ukraine, Turkey gets more dragged into that problem because, of course, that would give Russia total dominance in the Black Sea. I'm just wondering, where is Turkey, do you think, sitting as the machinations of Russia's victories or success in Ukraine, now this military pact with Israel and perhaps Saudi Arabia? Where's Turkey left in all of this?
Look, I guess Turkey is playing really wise and playing like, how can I benefit from all these things that are happening? So wherever there is, Turkey can have a leverage or any kind of influence, they're using it in a way to profit Turkey. Again, Turkey is in a big economic difficulty, and Erdogan needs to portray as the leader, regional leader, strong leader, etc., because this is what his constituency always wants. Even if there is like economic difficulties, they want that leader that is able to talk to, equal to Macron, Biden, etc., or the regional leaders. So for Turkey, they at the end of the day, this is not something that would be against their if you want, influence in the region. On the contrary, that they could see that since they are a NATO member and these are creating something of that, so they could play an important role as a bridge between both regions. So I don't think they are really alarmed by that. On the contrary, there were a rapprochement between Israel and Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, UAE, Turkey, Egypt. So I think they're not bothered by this. They're just like looking at it and seeing how they can benefit from this.
Let's go to the survey results and give Neil the last word this morning. So we have a no being the kind of dominant one here, that will sanctions succeed in reducing the amount of Russian oil getting to global markets in the second half of the year? 2-1, no, they won't.
Wow.
Your closing thoughts on the survey result, but also where Europe's resilience will be. We have reports over the weekend of the German industrial leaders going and meeting with the chancellor, sort of saying, this looks pretty bad. How long or how hard can we clamp down on these sanctions, with an outlook for, like, we're having to conserve energy already? Where's the resilience in Europe to make a real impact here?
Well, Europe has not yet really been fully tested, of course. At least its resolve has not yet been fully tested, because we haven't got into the winter period. And if I was a European leader, I would be praying that the long-term weather forecast for the next winter season predicts a mild season. Because if we get a really severe winter and it sets in very early, then we're in big trouble. But it does look as if, quite frankly, the European leaders are going to have to face some tough choices if they're going to continue to support Ukraine. And that might involve, and quite likely would involve, some kind of rationing of energy supplies to heavy industrial users, perhaps the imposition of demand management measures to end consumers, for example, speed limits, that kind of thing. So, I think the toughest tests for Europe are yet to come. But I mean, I'm astounded by the outcome of the survey result. I really am. 2-1 against the proposition that Russian supplies will fall. I assume the people that said no to that take the view that European resolve will not hold, and or Russia will manage to sell increasing volumes to China and India, which is another possibility. So I'm surprised, not necessarily that the no proposition won, perhaps, but I'm surprised by the size of that majority.
Neil, do you put much weight to this proposal put forward at the G7 last week, this sort of price cap on Russian oil? I barely understand it myself, but ultimately another machination.
No, I think it's ridiculous. It requires cooperation from all producers, all consumers. So far, we've seen China and India, for example, are to all intents and purposes not showing any kind of solidarity with Ukraine. They are, quite understandably, in the case of India, we read in the press this morning, they're banning product exports or limiting product exports by imposing taxes on them. They are always complaining with some justice about high crude prices set alongside the depreciation of the rupee. So India, if it can continue buying more and more Russian oil at $35 a barrel below Brent, they're going to continue doing it in their own self-interest. So the price cap mechanism, if it doesn't include major buyers as well as major suppliers, is dead on arrival.
Dead as a dodo on arrival. Thank you, Neil. Thank you, Omar. Thank you, Laurie. As always, great to kick off Monday morning with such an A team. Brent trading up at 112.33 and NYMEX WTI at 109. So more or less still locked in that space between 110 and 120 on the lower end of the band. Where will it move this week? I suppose something definitive would need to happen for it to break out of that, at least on the front month. As Omar said, everybody is so long. There would need to be something, I think, significant in the winds. And maybe the Biden thing will give some new direction to the world. We'll have to see. But we're here every morning, 10:30 a.m. UAE time. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We'll catch up with you and have a great week.
Thank you. Have a good
Thank
week.
you.